Tourism in the Dominican Republic just crashed, down 10% year over year for the month of February. And in today's video, I want to share exactly why that happened, what's going to happen next, short term and long term, and then what it looks like, I guess, in the future for tourism. Here's a little spoiler alert. I remain very, very bullish long term. But let me break this down a little bit further. First, in February, what happened? 10% drop in tourism year over year. Couple of variables in that. One is the economic uncertainty. A lot of it's spurred by tariff talk and other things. There's a lot of uncertainty, so people tend to kind of hold on to their money. They put aside things, luxuries like travel, for a little bit until they feel a little bit more financially secure. But the other thing, and this is really interesting, is it was noted that there was a significant reduction in flights available in the month of February, despite an open skies agreement that created more flight options from the United States long term. And here's why. Aerojet, a Dominican-based airline, had plans to open routes from Miami and New York to the Dominican Republic, and I think from Puerto Rico as well, in a shorter term than they've been able to because Boeing has delays in producing and bringing to them the 737 MAX. So that's one reason. The other is less demand for flights right now because of that economic uncertainty. But in addition, we have seen American add routes, Spirit add routes, and there's an airline out of Hartford. It might have been Delta, I'm not sure, United, that's adding routes to the Dominican Republic. But cities like Indianapolis, Detroit, Pittsburgh, Raleigh, Durham, Nashville are all now producing direct flights down to DR. So longer term, the flight thing will fix itself. But the economic uncertainty kind of remains the center of it all right now. In a prior video, I dove deep on tariffs and the impact of the Dominican Republic. And what I said in that video, my take, just my assessment is with a 10% tariff, that is way less of a tariff than any other country that's competing in the same industries as DR. Industries that DR is tariffed on are, textiles, agriculture like sugar and cacao, and medical devices. And countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam, while they've now said, we're going to get rid of our tariffs, that hasn't been accepted, but they're being charged like 43, 37, 49% tariffs for the same types of goods. So DR is near shore, it's closer, it's cheaper, labor is less, and they're tariffed less. So while the economic system got shook like a snow globe and everybody kind of freezes in place and you see the market react, longer term, the argument I made was, hey, look, long-term Dominican is positioned to win, and I stand by that argument. But one thing in there that I felt like I could expand on more, and I'm doing this without edits because, my God, Trump, things move so fast, I don't want to have to go to the editor, come back, and by the time this gets out to the world, things have already changed. But for right now, as we sit, tariffs are still being imposed. Countries are coming to the table to the United States to say, we'll remove our tariffs, but Trump has still not said he'd be willing to do so. If I'm betting he's going to, especially when Israel says not only will we take away our tariff, but we'll make up for the trade imbalance, at a certain point, I'm sure he's going to, capitulate and negotiate. This is him. He goes wild and crazy and creates all this chaos. But the point I'm making though is that in the short term, I didn't share on that last video the impact on tourism. What I did share was the long-term impact on tourism, and real estate is very positive. Go back and watch that video for my assessment. And again, I stand 100% by that. But again, when you shake the globe, shake the snow globe and shake the world's economy, we'll have short-term pain in manufacturing, but there'll also be short-term pain in the other two sectors, real estate and tourism. But today, let's focus on tourism. I'll get to real estate another time, especially with the president of the Dominican Republic recently announcing increased measures for deportation and protection at the border. We'll analyze that separately. That's a little bit more stable. I can record and edit and make it look nicer because that shouldn't change much in the next few days, where this I had to get out right now. So that is what happened, and that's what I said. So here's what I see from a tourism perspective. I believe for the next few months, and I'm not an economist, I'm not a tourism expert, but I think you're going to see a similar dip, 10, 20%. April might be the least because of Semana Santa and vacations and spring break, and we're going into a shoulder season anyway, but just year over year, I think we'll see a little bit of a dip, maybe as high as 10+% over the next few months. In fact, I would say you could even see as low as 20%, depending on how long this chaos in the world economically sort of stays. But you're going to see a dip, no doubt, in the short term. And the reason for this, honestly, is less to me about tariffs or no tariffs. Because in the long term, let's be honest, if tariffs become normal, if they go long term, they're going to have a shockwave. They're going to plunge us into recession. All that's going to happen. But at a certain point, the world renormalizes. Just like when interest rates went from 3 to 7%, housing dipped. But once things normalized around 7%, housing became hot again, right? Now we're facing another potential economic condition, but you get the point. It will normalize. But tariffs aren't the issue. The issue that's going to create this dip, I believe, in tourism and just discretionary spending by Americans is really the unpredictability of Donald Trump. Here's the thing. He put tariffs on Canada and Mexico. And then Canada and Mexico said, we're going to increase troop presence at the border. And Canada said they're going to reduce the fentanyl, they're going to work hard to reduce fentanyl imports into the United States. And then that happened. But he put tariffs on anyway. So it's like, well, I thought if they did that, tariffs wouldn't go on. And, some people might argue for or against. People call me MAGA. People say I'm not MAGA, whatever. This isn't what that's about. If you're MAGA, you love the tariff system. If you're not MAGA, you hate the tariff system. I'm not a pro-tariff guy, per se. If they're used as a negotiation tool, great. But the chaos of on again, off again is creating a lot of problems in the world, for sure. So back to Canada, Mexico. They're off. They're on. And then they're off again. And then the world has tariffs placed on it. Every country got hit with a tariff. And now it looks like we're in this sort of like standard Trump holding phase of I'm not going to show my cards. You got to offer me more and more. I'm going to see how much you offer me. And when I feel like you're out of offers, other countries, then I'll capitulate. So tariffs off again. I project that happening. I'm sure many of you do. And that's great. Many of you are like, oh, there we go. They're gone. But man, if TJ Maxx were holding a sale and they said 70% off on Friday, and I go, great, I'm going on Friday. And then on Thursday, they say, never mind, we're not doing that anymore. I'm like, oh, that sucks. And then they go, ooh, next Friday, 70% off. And I'm like, great, I'm gonna go. And they go on Thursday again, no, never mind, we're not gonna do that still. I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna keep my hands in my pocket. I'm not going to spend my money there. I'm not gonna do anything until you figure yourself out. This chaos is just, never mind. It's the same thing with the US economy. When you're on again, off again tariffs, people are gonna be like, look, I'm gonna keep my money in my pockets. I'm gonna wait. I'm not gonna, let's cut some bills. Do we really need Disney Plus? All of that stuff happens in this time. And that creates uncertainty, and that uncertainty creates the dips in things like tourism in the Dominican Republic. And it hurts the economy. It hurts the locals, all of that stuff. That said, I don't think it's going to be prolonged. I think that you will actually see a robust recovery once long-term does happen for all the reasons I mentioned before. I think DR is positioned well as a nearshore partner. I think DR is very stable. I think DR has a ton of upside as far as what it offers to Americans from a pricing and opportunity perspective. So here's a few reasons why I see tourism winning in the long run here in Dominican Republic. First is the evidence of resilience for Dominican tourism from the past. Go back to 08. Post 08, DR saw a return by 09 to pre-08 levels of tourism. Now that was back in like the 3-4 million tourist days, or visitors, I should say. That was back in a time when there wasn't as many visitors, so it's not as robust. It's not as big where it can tumble more, right? But like it dropped and went right back in 09, which was still in the recession. It wasn't like we were out of it. And by 2010, it was already starting to accelerate above 25, 26, 27 level. So people started coming here again. So recovery was fast. Post Hard Rock, everybody remembers the Hard Rock alcohol thing that came out. That as well was recovered very quickly. Tourism saw a little dip and came right back after that news cycle went through. And then post-pandemic, by all accounts, DR recovered and obviously has thrived beyond any other Caribbean nation in terms of its post-pandemic response and the growth in tourism. So resilience, to me, evidence of resilience shows that DR will recover just fine after what I believe will be a middle of the year drop in tourism year over year, but still ahead of 2019 levels. So still, the progress, but some of that will be lost over the next few months, I believe. The other variables are, who is DR competing with for travel? So if you look at Cancun, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but there was like a cartel-style murder at or near the Rio in Cancun. Like, that's news that scares the hell out of Americans. Like, that makes headlines. It's like, oh my God, the cartels have infiltrated the resorts. I'm gonna think twice before I go to Cancun or Cabo or any Mexican resort. So that is one piece of the news cycle that I think does hurt a country. When it's like the cartels have infiltrated where tourists go, that's a problem. Jamaica has a level 3 travel advisory, and they've had that for a long time. Dominican Republic only a level 2. Cancun is a level 2. Maybe that gets popped up. We shall see. But Jamaica has long been perceived as a beautiful place, but maybe a little bit less safe than a place like the Dominican Republic, especially Punta Cana, which has been regarded as being very safe. In fact, there was a travel magazine that recently published why Punta Cana is soaring or has been soaring, and it directly cites this point. Safety in Jamaica and safety in Mexico are perceived to be worse. So DR wins in that regard. And the other part is people worry about the news cycle with the missing girls to Diksha Kananki that happened recently. I mean, I get it. I'm sure it has the impact in some minds, but when people go to schedule their vacation, they look at the options and they say, okay, you got cartel style hits in one place. Jamaica looks nice. Oh, wow, I didn't know the travel advisory is that high. Dominican, there was that one girl, but I mean, I guess she was drunk. She did go to the beach at 4 a.m. by herself with somebody she didn't know. And that's the only story. So, I think people pretty quickly realize that is a one-off versus it being some, sign of the Dominican Republic. I'll tell you this quick story. I think it's interesting to kind of like land this point. When I worked in insurance claims, you would get plenty of people that were extremely upset with the decision made by the claims adjuster on their claim, how much they're getting paid, all of that good stuff, whether they're denied. And I can recall many times, especially as an adjuster when I was handling claims, people shouting at me, cursing me out on the phone and telling me they will not spend another dime with this company. They will never renew with this company. And then F you, and they hang up the phone. And like 9 months later, another claim comes through, and it happens because I would handle claims locally. It would have to be the same person that has a policy that renewed like a month ago or 2 months ago, or maybe once or twice in that time. Like it might have been a year later and we had 6-month policies. People would renew. And why did they renew? They were so upset about the claim because when they go out and shop, price is king. If the price is best here, they don't want to spend more money. Most people don't for their values or their morals in that regard, or what they say they are. Like no matter how upset they are, that wanes, and then they end up spending what they believe is the right amount of money for them. The same thing would happen in real estate. I'd buy a property, we'd raise rents to a certain degree, but not all the way to market. Everyone would get upset. They'd go like, we're moving out. They'd go test the market. They'd see it's even more expensive to move elsewhere, and they'd stay right here and pay the increased rent, right? It's the same concept. DR, what about that girl? Oh my God, Cancun, what? How much? Because Jamaica's more expensive. Oh, well, it was just a girl that did something on her own. You see my point, right? People come back to logical conclusions. I don't see this having a long-term tail. The other thing people on this channel might say to me is like, Jamie, what about all the Haiti stuff? The protests in Furiosa. And here's what I'll say about that. Unless and until there's a massive breach from a safety perspective that gets all the way to Punta Cana, or there's an uprising here that makes national news or international news. Like, I don't know if you guys saw this jet set in Santo Domingo, the roof collapsed and many people died. It's such a tragic story. I've been to jet set. Like, I can't imagine being in there when that happened. Like, that makes international news. That's a big deal. Haitian-Dominican relations and migration policy is very important to you and me as you watch this channel. If you're new to my channel, welcome, by the way. Hit subscribe. But if you're not following along with the politics of DR and you're just an American looking to go on vacation, doesn't even hit your news feed. It doesn't matter. How much is it safe? Oh, girl went missing. One girl, oh, she went, yeah, that story, that doesn't bother me. They booked their vacation on the most price-effective, beautiful blue water, white sand beach place they can get. That issue, unless it becomes international headlines for much, much bigger reasons, which I don't project, we'll talk about that in another video, then I don't see that affecting tourism either. So just to address news cycle stuff. Other things can come up. Absolutely. And again, if the Haiti thing spills over and becomes a major international issue, perhaps Dominican Republic takes a bigger hit on tourism. But after a slowdown, once this tariff thing settles down, it accelerates. But again, all of that is depending on the unpredictability of the President of the United States and what he does. We don't know. Nobody knows what he's going to do. So what do? I thought about this. Like, I want to leave you with something, and I'll just tell you what I do. I can't tell anybody what to do, but I'll tell you what I do. About 3 years ago, I interviewed a guy on my podcast. His name is David Nurse. He's a former NBA coach, shooting coach, and he's a keynote speaker. Really, really cool guy. And we had this whole discussion then, 3 years ago, about recession and correction and, how people are feeling going into it and holding on to their money. And, how do you keep your mindset right when you go into a recession? And he goes, I don't participate in the recession. And my mind went like, what do you mean you don't? How do you not? How can you not? Here's what I would say, just to give an example. In the worst of worst recessions in all of our lifetime, unemployment got to like 8, 9%. Some say 10, but let's just go with like 8, 9%. I've seen different figures on this in '08, right? So 8%. Unemployment now is 4%. That's half. You would hear in the news, if it went to 8% again, like unemployment doubled. And there would be 1,000% focus on the 8% and not focus on the fact that 92% still have jobs. And here's how I make that point really salient and valid, I think. Imagine going into a room with 100 people in it. And somebody welcomes you in the room and they go, hey, this room is 100 people, 96 of which have jobs. That's 4% unemployment, right? 4 don't have jobs. 96 people here have jobs. You'd be like, oh, okay, cool. And then a couple months later, you go back to that room, 100 people, and they go, yeah, this is the same room. Yeah, like 94 people have jobs in here, or 92 people have jobs in here, 8% unemployment. So it went from 96 to 92. I don't know about you, but in that room of 100 people, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, what happened? Oh my God, that's a double. That's crazy. My mind would still be on, all right, so 90+% have jobs, 92%, 96%, tomato. Like, I feel bad for those 4 and the impact on them, those additional 4. But you tell me, it wouldn't hit me as like a massive change if you said 96 one month and 92 the next month. It just wouldn't, because it's still a huge number, overwhelmingly most of the room that has a job. But if you walked me into that room and said, these 8 people don't have jobs and they're suffering and they're struggling and this policy and this happened and that's what I get he meant by I don't participate in the recession. 92, well, even now, 96% have jobs. The jobs report came out last month. It was very positive. We'll see what it does this coming month. But the point I'm making is what you can do is really zoom out and look at your own situation. All right, do you have some money saved? Do you have your retirement in place? And if you're looking at the stock market, whatever, it's, again, we're talking about right now. It's painful to watch, but it's paper losses. It's not real losses. Like, unless you have to cash in now, and even if you did, that means you've probably been in the market for 40 years. And if you're in the market for 40 years, it's way better than it was then. It's just not as high as it was 2 weeks ago, but still you're way up. But you get my point. Let's not get nutty on paper losses. I don't. I've suffered paper losses. It is what it is. But the point I'm making is, like, if you zoom out and say, I have a job, feels stable. If it doesn't, only you can assess that. I've got some money saved. You know, we've got no debt or very little debt. We have a mortgage. A lot of people on here are like, I have no debt other than a mortgage. I'm proud to say that. My only debt is a mortgage in the United States, which soon not, because we're selling it. But you get my point. All of that is assessing for yourself, like, wait a minute, okay, the news is focusing in on the worst aspects of the economy. But when you look around, it's like sun comes up, sun goes down. People are walking around. There were some people visiting here yesterday that were all in this pool. They were friends of one of our neighbors. If I go to a restaurant, I can go right now. There's 100 people. The restaurant's full. You know what I mean? Like, look around and decide for yourself, are you participating in the recession? And if you are, make sure you get yourself taken care of. Find a better job if this one's going to go away. But for 92, 96, whatever the number is, percent of us, maybe more at this point, we're going to be okay. We're going to see the losses. We're going to see the news cycle. We're going to see all the bad and the ugly and the gory and all that stuff, but it's not bad. And look, I'll let you in on this little hint as well, as far as what's called negative bias. As a media guy here, right? If you watch my thumbnails, a lot of people they come at me like, oh, that title is so negative. Well, here's the unfortunate reality. Negative bias sells. So the news does that. And I'll admit, I'm in the place of getting views, right? I'm no better. If I see the avenue to get you to see something and click here and get this information, but it has maybe a coding that feels a little negative, because that I've shown my click-through rate goes up when I use negative bias. I don't always use it, but when I do, it's actually higher than if I have a positive story. That's the way we're conditioned. The news knows that. The news makes a lot of money from advertising. So I'm going to give like a little like, oh my God, is it bad? Where they're going to say, economy collapsed. People are dying. It's the worst. This happened in COVID, right? But I remember in COVID stepping outside and going, man, the way it is on TV, I thought I'd see a mist out here. I thought there would be like a fog and just people laying in the street dead. So don't feel like you need to participate here. If you can go on vacation, go on vacation. Economies ebb and flow. It is what it is. Tourism goes up and down. Tourism has been on a 4-year, 5-year run of like up and to the right. It has to correct at some point before it takes off again. It's like if you have hair, which I don't, you got to cut the dead ends in order for the hair to grow. All of that said, that's what I would say. I'm going to share on another video as I do kind of this series, the Abinader decision on Haitian migration and where I see that impacting real estate. I'm not getting into the Haiti, Dominican thing, but the impact on real estate, because there will be one, absolutely will be one. That plus the tariffs and all of this craziness, there will be a short-term and long-term impact on real estate, and I'll explain where I see it being bad, good, or somewhere in between. Until then, folks, I'll see you on the next one.